I want to start, first of all, and acknowledge that some of you may be triggered by this information. And if you find the content disturbing in any way, we all understand. So please look after yourself. You are the one that needs to be looked after. This could mean leaving the session. It could mean turning off your video. Whatever makes you okay with the material. And if you do choose to leave, then feel free to contact me or contact Sarah or Gina, and gladly I'll send you what my notes were and if you have any questions. So I just wanted to get that out of the way first of all. And I'd like to welcome you all, and you're taking a this is really important, so I thank you. Um, uh, So who we are, and I'm going to go briefly over this. I'm going to go over, I've got a lot of slides here. If I did this in person, there would be less slides. So we started about 8 years ago as simply as let's have a conversation and what can we do and what can we not do. And we're a very small group of very motivated and passionate volunteers. Before COVID, we were 25. We're down to about five passionate volunteers, and we do what we can. Um, I want to give you a quote from Landry, who's the executive director of MPAHT International, in his June 23 report. He said, turning insights into actions. And I actually had the privilege of meeting Guillem last week in Mexico City, where there was a meeting pretty much of South American, and the US was represented, and so was Canada. ECPAT is basically about trying to stop the exploitation of children. And they're centered in Bangkok, where they started about 30 years ago. And there will be a lot more happening between him and Canada. We had a great discussion. And this is how I started. This sign was at Daughters of Cambodia in 2016 when I visited there. We were in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, and I asked our guide, where can I go and get souvenirs to bring home that will help the community? And he led us to Daughters of Cambodia, which basically their role is helping those who have been in some kind of exploitation, whether that's sexual or labor, and what they do and what they work and how they work with these and predominantly women and young girls. Many have children. And I was there again a couple of years ago and saw a lot of changes. So that's all good. But that sign is what prompted what I did. And then about a year after that, I was fortunate to be on a roundtable discussions where I led one at the UN Women in Trust conference. And the keynote speaker, who was a young woman who had survived sexual exploitation, she just said, I just want to be thought of and treated as a human being. And I have to say that just stuck with me. So I hope what we're talking about, oh, I'm going backwards. I hope what we're talking about is going to work for you as well. So let's talk about what human trafficking is. And this is the International United Nations Office, which basically states what it is. Um, and and it's changes a little bit by country. Ours is a little bit different, but it's pretty much shared all over the world. Every person who recruits, transports, transfers, receives, holds, conceals, or harbors a person or who exercises control or influence over the movements of a person for the purpose of exploiting them or facilitating their exploitation. So it's not prostitution, and the laws on prostitution are different everywhere in the world. I'm not even going to go there. There's different kinds of exploitation. Certainly, we think first of sex exploitation. Um, there's also labor trafficking, child brides, fake job ads, cyber scamming workers who are being exploited. So it's not one, it's not one type fits all. There's also organs. It's pretty awful when you start to look at it. Um, but we certainly know it as sex trafficking. So I just want to show you what some of the estimates are around the world, and we'll just show this. Uh, there we go.
50 million people are in forced labor or forced marriage globally. These are men, women, and children who are forced to work or to marry because of threats, violence, deception, or abuse of power. An estimated 28 million people are in situations of forced labor, and a further 22 million people are in forced marriages. This is a significant increase over the last 5 years. Women and children are particularly vulnerable. More than two-thirds of those forced to marry are female, and almost three-quarters are younger than 15. Migrants are more likely to be in forced labor or to be trafficked than other groups. And more than 3 million children are in forced labor, half of them in commercial sexual exploitation. Modern slavery occurs in almost every country in the world. In fact, more than half of all forced labor occurs in upper middle or high income countries. Entrapment in forced labor can last years, while in most cases, forced marriage is a life sentence. But it doesn't have to be this way. We know what needs to be done. With the right policies and action, we can all help end modern slavery. See what role you can play by checking out the latest global estimates of modern slavery.
50 million people worldwide are being trafficked right now. Population of Canada, about 41 million. That means each and every person could conceivably be trafficked right now in Canada that lives here. It's a huge number. It's growing with refugees, with climate change, and so much more. And no, we can't control a whole lot of that. We really can't with our jobs and the world that we work in, but we can take small actions. And we're going to talk a little bit about those as we move closer. I wanted to show you that there are estimates and statistics from other organizations, but this is only the tip of the iceberg. If I've learned anything, it's that it's the tip of the iceberg because we never know everything. But remember this, the victim gets nothing, absolutely nothing. And remember this, it's a reusable commodity and it's tax free. So if you think of drugs, um, once the bad people get rid and sell their drugs, they have to create new drugs. If you've got a person trapped in sex exploitation or in labor trafficking, they're reused time and time and time again. It's a reusable commodity, sad to say, but that's what it is. And it is truly the tip of the iceberg. And this is another group of just little different numbers that you'll see coming up now and again. But just think about 50 million. If you think about 50 million, that's enough to, well, it was enough to make me stop and think. But how does it happen? In simple terms, it can happen in as little as 2 days. So the trafficker, and I'm going to use girl, we all know it's girls, boys, young women, young men, transgendered, it's all of that. But I'm going to use the term girl just for expediency. So first they're lured. The trafficker makes the girl feel loved, special, gets to know her. This could happen in a train station. When I was in Mexico City, they showed some work that's being done literally in the train stations in Guatemala in particular. And so they get to know them and they offer them help. They may buy them food just because, hey, you look lonely, let me buy you a coffee. Then they start to groom them and they play the role of the boyfriend. So they treat them to new things like get their hair done, get their nails done, promise her the world. I love you. They may begin illicit drugs or not. We have one survivor that we work with who her trafficker it did not allow drugs, plain and simple. She could have been in much more trouble than she already was had she gotten caught on drugs. Then they start to manipulate you and coerce you. If you don't do this for me, I won't love you anymore. And I will tell your mother. And you know that dog you told me about? I will kill that dog. A lot of this happens in Canada and the US, in a lot of the malls, a lot of the big malls where a lot of the big, stores are there, where a teenage girl may feel, well, I'll never be able to afford that. And that's how it starts. And so they coerce them, they manipulate them, they switch back and forth. And finally, then they're exploited. And once they're exploited, it's very difficult to leave. And I've also often asked, what if they don't meet the quotas that they're given? Well, they don't get food, they don't get to sleep, they don't get to take a shower because they have quotas. And that's what makes it even more difficult. And I've often asked, why don't they just leave? My answer to that, and I have to admit that I'm often asked that when I go and speak to college students in hospitality programs. So they're 18 to 23, 24 years old. And my answer is if you're a young woman trapped in a marriage and it's domestic violence, why don't they leave? And they have a lot more well, I shouldn't say a lot more, maybe they don't. So how do you expect a 13-year-old to do it? It's really, really, really very difficult. Um, These are some figures that came out of the Human Trafficking Statistics Canada 2021. Since we've had a hotline in Canada from the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking, they've been doing a lot of research, and I really suggest that you go to their Canadian Human Trafficking hotline and you can look at all of this research. The greatest thing that people need when they call into the hotline is housing. If we can't house these people, and we all know it's an issue right across Canada for a lot of reasons, then how do you expect them to move forward? Many have lost their credit cards. They have no access to their banks. They have no access to a cell phone, certainly no internet access. They need a place to live, and we don't have enough of those places, mostly in metropolitan areas across the country. Um, And these are stats from 2022 from the hotline calls, which is 1-800-900-1010. Put it in your phone. 1,500 of human trafficking cases were identified. 2,170 were victims, survivors recognized. 67 from Ontario, 67% of the calls were from Ontario, of which 69% were about sex trafficking and 6% labor trafficking. The challenge has been to get that number known more across Canada. I would bet that there are some people on this call who didn't know we had an 800 number in Canada. Well, we do, and so use it. And this is some of the research that shows where the connections are across Canada. You can see them right across Canada. They move north, they move south. At one time, different police departments from different provinces were not connecting with each other. So it was easy for a trafficker to go from, say, Quebec to Ontario, and move on from there, from Alberta to BC, and no connections were made. Now those connections are starting to happen. So you can kind of get access with them. And there's a lot more connections with the US as well. A couple of facts that can happen to someone I know or in my neighborhood, city, or country. It can happen to anybody. The key issue is vulnerability, of course. And I go back to thinking when I was 13 years old, I didn't have very much confidence in myself as a 13-year-old teenager, but I didn't have the internet. I did not have the internet. Today, the internet is a great way for traffickers to find victims. I had no internet. I couldn't hang out in plazas. Um, and so it was very different, but it is about vulnerability. But they come from normal families as well. And I say normal, whatever that means to anybody today. And they're recruited from the schools. I mean, there are traffickers who stand outside of schools and recruit young people. And it's involved through friends. So one friend sadly gets involved and they get extra food if they can bring in more people to be trafficked. So it's a myth that it can't happen. It's happening in every city, in every town, everywhere across our country and every country in the world. It only happens in low-end mo hotels and motels. False, 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 false. It happens in every hotel. Basically, what the traffickers do once they've exploited the people is start them out in high-end hotels. I'm talking five-star properties. And then as they get worn down, they move them to one-star properties or trucker stops. Truckers Against Trafficking in the US is doing some really good work on, especially, and there's a few people in Ontario that are involved in this as well, at highway stops. I don't know if you've got en route stops out in Western Canada, but the stops along the highways where you can stop and get a coffee, go to the bathroom and get information, those are highly used. And so they start them up here and they work them down, right down to next to nothing. Um, and traffickers can sometimes be women because that gets them out of having to turn tricks from time to time. And labor trafficking is also, it's everywhere. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I read an article this morning in the paper that really turned me on. I shouldn't read the newspaper, as my husband says. But what are we doing about it? And I have to tell you, we are doing a lot. So many are joining the code with MPAHT. Just go to the code. It's six criteria. It's not expensive for your organizations, your hotels, your restaurants to join. We have just been, I guess it's about 6 months now. We are the Canadian country representative for the code in Canada. So if you want any information, just let me know and I can help you. And it is a group of us, and I will say that South America is much more involved in this than we are in Canada or the US. The US has a fairly large group called pact.org. Um, we're working on getting bigger. We have, to my knowledge, five or six members in Canada. But if you want to get involved, let me know. I can walk you through it. I can connect you to our code administrator, Danuta, who works out of Czech. And and it won't cost you a whole lot of money. And you can put the logo everywhere and you're going to do good. Train all your employees, whatever format you want to use. I know not in my city has training programs. The BC government, I understand, has some training programs. PACT USA has training programs which you can use, which are this same as in Canada. If you want more on that, I can help you. We work with planners and venues creating awareness, just like this. That's all this is awareness. MPI site and PCMA have joined the code. I know that MPI has a anti-human trafficking committee, and there are a number of Canadians on that committee. Um, Ottawa Tourism, my my model, they are creating anti-human trafficking plans that you can use, and they're open. Just contact them. Again, I can put it's Lizzie Lowe probably. They are sharing all of their plans so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have become a member of the code, but in a different way. So what's happening is the code is opening up to different kinds of organizations. One of them is going to be tourism bureaus. I don't know much about that. Ottawa Tourism can fill you in on that. And if you're working in sales, open up the conversation not only with your facility, but with planners who are coming to you with potential business. If that planner doesn't open up the conversation, find out what your venue, what your property, what your city, what your restaurant is doing. Open up the conversation because then you look like a hero. Okay. Because you know what? If anything I've realized along this is also about money. Um, if you're doing good, you're going to be able to get more, especially the way the world is going now. And I hope it continues to go that way, where being a good corporate citizen is truly important. You can go to the next We Are Packed for professionals. There's so much information on there. There's all kinds of information on signage in the US because some of their states are mandated. We are not in Canada mandated to post signage, but that's a whole other issue. But you can get ideas from there. I've got a template I'm going to show you. Again, we are that representative in Canada, so please, please come to us. This is a template that we've been using. Sorry, that number is 1-833-910. Um, and we're offering this to anybody. I've got a template I can send you. This was designed by Ottawa Tourism, us, and the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. What you do with it is whatever you want to do with it. We suggest you obviously brand it with your own colors and logos. But what it is a two-sided card that we suggest you put it in the hotel rooms. We're not getting much traction on that, to be honest, but there's other places you can put it. Put it in your lobby, make a sign, do whatever you want. There's lots of things you can do with it. And that's the key. Do something. That's truly the key. Oops. So these are some questions that we suggest to hotels and venues to if you're sending out an RFP. So for example, when I was doing this and I sent out an RFP, I'm not going to go through them, but I will tell you this, that when I put this in my RFP, if I got back that X hotel was doing nothing and didn't even want to have a conversation, and Y hotel was maybe doing nothing or doing a little bit, but was willing to have a conversation, and all things being equal for my part, for my client, I'd go to the one that's giving me the information and wants to open up the conversation. So it can be profitable. And I think more and more of that is going to happen today. I'm just going to. And then we have some signs. This was one of the first signs that was sent to me years ago by Accor Hotels in the Palliser in Calgary. I don't know if that one is still there. I do know Accor Hotels was one of the very first to join the code many years ago and is still really, really active in it. So we've got a good partner in Accor. These are some others that I've seen in the back of the Edmonton women's washrooms. And there's a lot of that happening now in a lot of places where I've traveled in the world. And I just got back at Pearson International and guess, I mean, like everybody else, the first place, pretty much the first place you go to when you get off the plane is the bathroom. No signage. Why not? And you'll see some on flight information things. These are two that I've seen in other areas. When I was in Bogota, Colombia last year, this one was on the in the lobby, just on a couple of tables there, and it has to be done there. It's the law. Colombia itself is doing a lot of great work in this area. And Lima, Peru, this one was inside the women's stall. So when I said South America, I wasn't kidding. Um, and then Shiva Foundation in the UK is a group of hotels. I think there's about 4 or 5 of them from uh, India, but they've been posting signage for 7 or 8 years now. And this is one of their original signs. And I was just in Namibia, which is a small African country, and this sign was at the Walvis Bay Airport, which their immigration is like 3 seconds, okay? None of this other stuff. So what else is there? Send me signage. I have a whole series of signs, and sometimes I adjust and change them. If you see anything, send it to me. Or if you hear anything, or whatever it is you want to do with it, be on the lookout. This is about awareness. Be on the lookout. So what do you look for? They pay with cash. This still happens from time to time. A female checking into 1 or 2 rooms. Sometimes they have 2 rooms. One room is for them and the John, and the other room is for their trafficker, who then just picks up the money after. The female's dressed inappropriately for their age or their weather, or they lower their head. They don't have access to their own ID. They check in with a little luggage, and the constant do not disturb sign on the door, and a major demand for towels and new bedding. Although that has changed because as we get smart, the traffickers get smarter. Now, often, the person who's checking into the hotel could be for 2 or 3 days will carry extra bedding and extra towels and so on in a carry-on and bring them in and take them home with them, take them out with them. And they also take out the used condoms. So, like I said, as we get smart, they get smarter. And I think the other thing for me is these automatic check-ins where you can check in with your phone and all that stuff. I'm greatly opposed to those because the front desk, assuming the front desk is trained, could see things that just don't look right. And usually they report it to their manager, who reports it to the director of security, who makes a decision on to report to police or not. But if I just can walk into the hotel and go up to my room, is there anybody walking around the lobby taking a look? I've asked that of a few hotels and nobody ever answers me. So I don't know what that means. So even if you're a hotel guest and you see many visitors coming, the guest escorts men to the room. An older male stays around the room. Um, Whatever you do, register it as a noise complaint. Never ever confront the victim, the trafficker, or the John. First of all, the victim could, be mutilated, and the trafficker could go after you, and the John, well. I don't even want to comment on John's. Okay. So just be on the lookout. I want to talk a little bit about supply chains in our industry. As a planner, when I would do events and conferences, the price of coffee. I mean, we all know the price of an urn of coffee is out of sight. Um, but we need to understand what that price of coffee relates to. So it's the picking of the beans and the whole supply chain until you actually serve it. Imagine if those people picking coffee got a wage that allowed them to, and a lot of them are children, allow them to still go to school, allow them to have a roof over their head, get any medications they needed, um, go to school, maybe even go beyond public school. Imagine that. And it can be done. It means increasing the price of your coffee. Yes, it does. But it's how you explain it as the hotel, as the coffee shop. It's how do you explain it? And that again goes back to showing that you're a good corporate citizen and building it in. And as a planner, I could then go to the registrants at that particular conference and say, this hotel buys coffee and brings it up through the supply chain, and they pay a reasonable price so that everybody gets what they need to live. And I think it's the way you talk about it instead of saying, yes, coffee is very expensive and it's going to go up again. So if you look, if you look at this list, there's about 11 or 12 different areas that are part of the supply chain. So look at what you're doing. You're not going to get to the bottom of all of it. There's no way. But you can try, you can look at it, you can become aware. And that's what we're trying to do here is let's become aware of all of these things. And we don't have to go any further than our own country. Kelowna brings in a lot of migrant workers to work in their the grape picking. We do it in Niagara, and there's a lot of issues out there. That's what I know best. I also know that in the States, in some US states, children as young as 12 are allowed to work, and it's not considered child labor. So, it's all happening. So where is help? Besides the code, besides Ottawa tourism, and I say this wherever you're traveling in the world, because a lot of us are travelers. These are the 800 numbers in the US, Canada, and Mexico. But if you're traveling anywhere else in the world, you can go to globalmodernslavery.org and they'll give you a contact anywhere in the world. I think, well, maybe not everywhere in the world, but certainly most South American countries, most African countries. And I highly recommend the other thing on human slavery and factories is check out the maconclub.org, which is doing some phenomenal work in this area. And their CEO sits on our advisory council. So what can we do? For me, it's all about collaborations, partnerships, action, power, and sadly, money. What we are finding now is that there's less and less silos. So we know that nurses and doctors are being trained. They're being trained, again, not to get the trafficker involved because that could be really a problem if they're in a merge. Um, so what are the lines? I talked about the lines in a hotel. What are the lines within where you work? Where do you go? What do you see? You can talk about this, a lunch and learn program. And I know that there's areas in everywhere that you are that will talk to this. Talk to your local police. Many now have human trafficking police officers that are made to deal with this. Judges and lawyers are getting involved and learning a lot more. And the whole banking industry. And when I was in Mexico City, they actually complimented Canada. Guillaume was talking about what Canada does with FinTrack in looking at money laundering and viewing things that look suspicious and not suspicious. If any of you want more information on that, we do have a contact with them that I can put you in touch with. It's about moving the contacts along. It's about what you can do. You can put that 800 number in your phone, and I apologize, it's 1833. Um, and you know, um, the 800 numbers are trying to be one stop for survivors so they can call in there. But you don't have to be a victim to call in. You can call in and say, I think I saw something, and this is what it looked like. You can report it at an airport too, if you're in an airport, because they're actually in Canada and the US pretty good about that. You can, train stations, any of that, airlines, a lot of staff on airplanes are being trained. Delta was one of the first. So find out what you can do and where you can do it. And I talked about the two roles. I want to just quickly talk about FIFA. I didn't learn a whole lot when I was in Mexico City because some of it was around there, but I now have contacts in Canada, and we're going to be doing a lot more work around that. But I think the only thing I really want to say about that is it's happening in Canada, in Toronto and Vancouver, which means out in Victoria and the island and Nanaimo and all the other places, you're going to get tourists. So what are you going to do about that? I don't know if your governments or your tourism bureaus are doing any work on that, but you might want to. And you're going to get a lot because Seattle is another, there's going to be a lot of games in Seattle as well. So that's the whole West Coast that's going to come up. And we know that South Americans are one of the biggest travelers to the FIFA games. So you're going to have a lot of South Americans. I don't know what they're doing. I'm starting to learn what we're starting to do a little bit in Toronto, and my fear is that we're going to be too late, but that's another story. And also FIFA, there was a representative from Mexico City, from Mexico, FIFA there. Mexico City, the stadiums are what FIFA controls. So they look for anything going on in the stadiums that is illegal, exploitive, or whatever. However, as soon as you exit the stadium, the area around the stadium is locally controlled. So that's where our police would come in, our um, face-to-face workers would come in. So what's the plan? And that's where most of the exploitation takes place. That's all I can tell you about that right now. I want to leave you with this because this is children, and children are very important. I don't know why that keeps coming up, but
School is an important part of every child's development. I like going to school. Me too. Me too. And we're pretty confident with our ABCs. But there are other kids just like us who don't have a chance to get their education. Like him. Like her. Like her. Like him. They don't go to school. They make products used every day with hands like mine. With hands like mine. With hands like mine. We're going to break it down for you and give you the ABCs of child labor. Here we go. Around the world, there are 168 million children trapped in child labor, harvesting bananas and coffee, mining diamonds, electronics, fish, gold, hazelnuts, incense, just to name a few. This is not okay. Leather, melon, not good. Palm oil. Poverty is a main cause of child labor. Quality education for these kids now. Rice, sugar cane, tobacco, United States law allows kids to work legally at the age of 12 on farms. This could be me. We need to do something about this. Exploitation of kids like me is wrong. You can do something about this. Because 0 is the number of children in the world who should be trapped in child labor. 0. 0. Is everyone listening? 0. You can help reduce child labor by downloading the U.S. Department of Labor's Sweat and Toil Act. Download it now. This app identifies more than 130 products that kids produce. Use it as a source of information to ask questions, take action, and demand change. So every child has a chance to learn and play.
If you can change the life of one person, you are in a better place. There are always things you can do. Mike Coates, Plenitude Consulting Limited, London, UK, and the Mekong Club. I want to thank you. There are 2 things you can do. You can download ILAB, and it's pretty good. It'll show you where a lot of the labor is happening and that 800 number into your phone. And a third thing, if you've got children, find a way to talk with them. Not easy. Find a way to talk with them and really know what they're doing on social media. Thank you.